Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is our GACA Western Forum. My name is Richie Mercado, and I've worked with the GACA and the NACAC Area Coaches Association for years. Um, we have three exciting guests on here today, and our topic is going to be development from the under 20 to the senior level. Of all types, the general development and then the high level elite development. And on here, we have three people who are very experienced in doing that. I'm going to introduce them each briefly and then they can talk a little more. First is Lindsey Malone, who has worked with heptathletes and jumpers for over 2 decades, was a heptathlete herself, and a friend and a great and wonderful coach. And she has been in the college system most of that time doing exactly that, working with athletes from junior to senior level. And when you have athletes at the NCAA championships, that's pretty much similar to world senior level competition. And oftentimes that competition itself is as good as some of the international meets. We also have Vicky Crolley from Canada, another old friend who has been coaching in the collegiate system in Canada and coaching for their national team for a long time. And she has worked with primarily hurdlers, but all sorts of other events. And she was the collegiate coach and hurdle coach and still is the coach of Damian Warner. And I got to meet her first when Damian, I believe, was 21 on an international decathlon. And so she has obviously helped shepherd him and others from junior to senior level and even to the highest level. Fernando Oliva is someone that some of you are familiar with, has been on here before. And Fernando works with jumpers, heptathletes, works also with, just came back from Winter Olympics, working with athletes in skeleton and bobsled, things like that. Um, he, for one thing, has worked with high level athletes from junior to senior level, including Nor Vitz, the silver medalist in Olympics or World Championships, who he has coached for, I believe, 12, 13 years now. So literally took her from her teenage years to the top level of the world. So I'm going to let them say a little more about themselves and share some ideas and maybe some slides, and then we'll get to some questions. So Vicky, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Richie. Yeah, that first competition was actually Damien's very first international competition. It was at, I believe, in Jamaica, NACAC, and remember the heat. And it was before cell phones, and when my camera was stolen from the sideline somehow.
I videoed for her athletes because her camera did get stolen.
Yeah. So we were still videoing back then, but I had the privilege of being a head coach at Western University here in Canada for 32 years as the head coach, and I just recently retired last season, and I'm still coaching as an assistant coach and coaching the Maltese group. Um, so that's very exciting for me. I'm still involved as a coach of some post-collegiate athletes. I have Damien is in that group, and I have two other decathletes as well as a 400-meter hurdler in my post-collegiate group. But as Richie said, we're here to talk about maybe the athletic development from like a U19 athlete to whatever level that they may be at. So I just thought I would share I do have a few slides and I can just speak with them um, or speak to them. I think this is, you
You're
guys
on.
can see this. Yeah. And my slideshow. Okay. So Damien, there's a picture of him when he was in high school and a club athlete. And during that time, he was competing in long jump, triple jump, and ran the 200 as a strong, kind of up and coming athlete that we didn't really know about. Um, and he's a local athlete as well. So I did begin coaching him when he was 19. It was the fall of his first year at college here in the city. He wasn't at Western University where I coach, but his high school coach had reached out to me to ask if he could maybe train with our university team. And he thought that he was a talented decathlete or a multiple sport athlete, also played basketball at the time. And so basically I took him in at that time and really had to teach him most of the events because as I said, he was coming from a little bit from a horizontal jumps background and a little bit of sprints, but mostly even I remember his club experience. He had a very good club hurdles coach. But the first practice that he went to for hurdles, he fell and he decided he didn't want to hurdle after that. So it's kind of interesting how that became one of his best events still to this day. Um, whoops. Okay, so I have been able to coach at a high level. I've been on 12 or 13 national teams, and I have coached some athletes who were medalists at U20 Worlds. Nicole Devonish in the long jump and Damien, or sorry, not Damien, Taylor Stewart in the long, also in the long jump. And those two athletes were medalists at the U20 Worlds, but never went on to win a medal at the Olympics or at the senior level. So there are certainly some different, models that you can find with athlete development, and there are probably reasons that they didn't go on to achieve at that high level as well. But then I've coached some other athletes, such as the female triple jumper that's in the screen, Caroline Earhart. And Caroline, and I'm going to talk a little bit about her model in a minute, but she's a 10-time national champion. And at the age of 32, jumped over 14 meters for the first time and set our Canadian record. Then that was in 2023. And then that fall, she, in a non-sport related incident, she sustained kind of a career-ending injury. So was kind of on set to maybe make her first Olympic team at the age of she would have been then 33, and that kind of cut her career short. Currently, I am coaching a decathlete, up and coming decathlete, Jackson McKay, who did compete at the U20 World Championships 2 years ago. But he was disqualified in the 400 for a line violation. So that was kind of his first international experience. And then the next year, there was no international event for him. He was finishing high school and he just started at my university this fall. And I'm quite excited to coach him. He's an incredibly talented young athlete and set our Canadian record, our U20 Canadian record this past summer with a score of 76.52. And the one downfall with Jackson is that he is still a multi-sport athlete and he's playing football. And so obviously there's like an injury risk there, which did occur at the end of the football season, very last game of their season, kind of delaying his track development. But anyway, so I'll have to continue navigating that with Jackson and determining, I really do think he's, I'm not going to say as talented as Damien because they're different athletes, but he certainly has what it takes to achieve very good things at an international level. Okay, so there are I believe there's like four types of athletes and how they develop. So I just kind of um, broke them into the four categories: the above average, not trained athlete, the one that actually will improve kind of right away as soon as you start coaching them or having them in an organized training program. Um, then they'll plateau and then they'll improve again. And Damien, and I'm going to say Jackson right now, is kind of um, in that category. Above average athlete, obviously came in not trained, then had time to develop and train. Then there's the above average trained athlete. So an athlete who's kind of at a high level already when they come in at this like U19, 19, 18, 19, 20 age. And their improvement won't be as great when I get them kind of at the university, starting of their university career. And it's like these athletes have already trained maybe 5 or 6 times a week. And then they will definitely plateau. Caroline is an example of that. She was also a world junior competitor and peaked early and then plateaued for almost 5 years. And then it was another, 10 years of training before she, really had a significant personal best again. Um, and then there's the average ability athlete who is trained. And these are all types of athletes that I see. So they're all different. This athlete, their improvement won't be very great when I first start working with them. They might have already, peaked early, and really it's hard to coach those athletes because they do get frustrated because they don't improve often. But there still is some hope that with, different coaching, different cues, for some other variables that they will improve. And then I would say probably the most common athlete that I work with is an athlete of average ability that's, you know, not trained when they come in. So they have some natural ability. So most of our university athletes, they've done enough maybe to be recruited or also just to be a walk-on. And so the most common athletes, and these athletes will usually have personal bests or PRs, every university year. So quite a difference in what kind of athlete would make up my training group. And then we can look at the stages of training. So there's like the early stage, which is usually like a U17 athlete, maybe starting to train. That could be like a 2 to 3 year block, training 4 times a week with less volume because they're probably doing other things too. And they're not necessarily on a periodized training program other than just tapering prior to main competitions. And then I would say the middle stage of training, which would be like the next 6 to 8 years, where athletes move towards training 6 times a week. They're getting used to more volume and they're following a periodized training program. So that could be like an easy, medium, hard week or thematic training where you've got different loads or different focuses on either technique or on work capacity during each phase or that they might be in. And then I'd say the final stage of an athlete's kind of career and training would be like the next 3 to 5 years. And from my experience, and this is, something that I've experienced with Damien, that we have gone down to reducing his training to, maybe 4 to 5 times per week. Still, maybe in a harder week, they would have a 6 time, they might train 6 times, but definitely there's less volume overall compared to the middle stage of training. There's definitely more recovery. Um, and there is like a periodized training program that's followed, but this is to try to prevent injury. From my experience, that's what I would say. And then oh, there we go. So that is actually Caroline Earhart at a later stage in her training, just doing a drill. Um, but I wanted to just kind of show you the case study of Damien, just very briefly, because I did talk about it a little bit. But in 2007 and 9, that was when he started as like that long jumper, horizontal jumper, ran some 200s, not really trained. Uh, was his first decathlon where he scored like 68.54. And then his second decathlon, quite a jump, scored 74.49. And then in the fall, so after that summer season, was when I began coaching him. And, initially I was probably working with him, 5 to 6 times, well, 5 times a week, and then it would have increased maybe to 6 times a week. But I obviously was very weary about the volume of a new athlete coming in to a different program. And then we started kind of the middle phase, and he had big improvements. Like that year, he had a 400-point PB. Okay. And then 2012, even bigger improvements, crazy, like a 600-point personal best. And then, and he was fit at his first Olympics in 2012, and he was fifth in those Olympics. And in 2013, kind of stabilized, or went down a little bit. Actually, no, he did go up a little bit. 70 points there, won a world bronze. Then he kind of stabilized. It's hard to tell when you only do 2 decathlons if you're improving or not. And one, he did have a no height and pole vault that year. And then in 2015, he did have another pretty big improvement at this stage in his career, which is in that middle phase, which I think for Damien was about 8 years long. And then in 2016, stayed about the same, won the Olympic bronze. And then he made a decision that he wanted a change. So he did end up moving out to Calgary and worked with Les Romantic, an exceptional world-renowned combined events coach. And he stayed there for 2 years. In It's always important for athletes to they have to be happy in their environment that they're living in. And I know he had gone out. This was the first time he had ever been away from kind of his hometown. And he and his partner Jen had gone out, and I think she was struggling a little bit. So they did make the decision after 2 years to come back to London. And we picked up the same coaching group, but Garlation ended up taking more of a lead role at that time. And I just stayed on board at that point to coach Damien in hurdles and oversee his running workouts as well. And then so coming back, that first year, not very much improvement. And then did in the late, then we went through COVID actually. And COVID was crazy here where he really couldn't, we didn't have an indoor facility that allowed him to run more than 30 meters at top speed. So kind of unbelievable that he came from that kind of training indoors and then went on to Tokyo to have his best ever decathlon still to this day, first time, well, over 9,000 points, and set the Olympic record. And then so that basically brings us to that, his U19 journey to the Olympic gold and record. Now, Damien is still in the late phases of his career. And I think because he had the injury last year at World Championships, um, he wasn't ready to be done. So he is still training and competing. He competed in 6 events in the heptathlon this past weekend. He had some decent results. I'm glad that he was competing. He still has his speed, which is incredible for someone at now he's 36. And yeah, so we're just kind of taking it one practice at a time. He definitely has reduced his training volume in order to, really try to stay healthy and have, medical intervention and therapy as often as possible. And I think he'll just take it like 1 year at a time. But he's been an incredible role model for this new, up and coming decathlete who I think will learn a lot from Damien and just his presence, not only in training but probably beyond when Damien's finished his career. Okay.
All right, thanks,
So we'll
Vicky.
leave it at that, Richie, and I will, and then you can maybe head on to the next presenter
Yeah,
or
yeah, let's go ahead and Lindsay, why don't you introduce yourself a little more and talk a little bit about your career and what you've done with athletes.
Sorry, had to unmute. I'm Lindsey Malone. I've coached in Division I athletics for 24 years. I was 6 years at Colorado State University and the past 19 at University of Colorado. I coach the combined events and jumps as well as all of the individual events within that. And I'm also the strength and conditioning coach for all of the athletes that I work with. I've gotten to experience a wide range of athletes to get to work with. And I must say that I do have favorite levels, and my favorite levels are beginners. And which is strange in Division I athletics, probably saying that, but I love athletes that are have the intangible characteristics that they're excited, they're willing to work hard, they can take information quickly. Oftentimes I suggest that they continue doing multiple sports in high school. It helps them, in my opinion, stay healthy for when they get into college. And I think this begins perhaps because when I first became a coach, the head coach said, I will give you a 10% scholarship. And if you've done well at the end of the year, I will give you 10% more. And so then you have to go out and find an athlete that is willing to come to your program for earning 10% of a full ride and help make them as best as they can be. And fortunately, I had several athletes that took the chance on me. The first three I signed became All-Americans. So I love walk-ons to 20%. For the men's team, women's team, we typically have a little bit more scholarship opportunities. So when you're looking at those numbers, or the way we looked at those numbers, were where you would score in the conference that I was coaching. So if you come in and you might be an 8th place person in your first or second year, you would be earning 1 team point, which would equate to a 10% scholarship. If you can come in and win the conference, that would be closer to a full ride, but that never happened in my career. From signing one in, they earned them as they went on for multiple All-Americans and conference champions. But I definitely love developing athletes. So oftentimes, especially for decathletes, it were maybe athletes that had done hurdles and long jump, hurdles and high jump, or someone that had done none of the events and were a sprinter, but were really excited to try. And on the heptathlon side, oftentimes the women were more along the lines of sprinters that we could change over, or a high jumper that also had the desire to learn more. So that's kind of where I got my start. And then maybe that's my sweet spot of really enjoying working with athletes that are new to the sport and new to the events, and then teaching them from scratch. It's like Vicky said, big learning curve for all of us. Even just teaching them, this is what practice is going to look like. This is what we're wearing. We have a 38 to 45-minute warm up. And a lot of this is new to them. And sometimes, well, in high school, I had to run a lap to warm up, and then we were pretty much ready to go. And so it's just really fun getting to teach them through all of the aspects and really become a teacher of the sport and have students of the sport. So my undergrad is in art education. I absolutely love teaching. So it's really fun and exciting to get to help explain the whys the entire time and help them understand their sports. So when you're developing them to hopefully be a U20 participant and that later goes on to make some senior teams, is that they have a say in how they've come about and what they've done, and they've learned it from the very beginning. And every year we have 38 minutes in stretching circle where we review the basics. And I don't care if you're a fifth year senior that has a school record in the hurdles. We're going to talk about the start, every single aspect of it. So everyone has a rejuvenation for the excitement of the sport. I think one of the biggest things for me is I was a heptathlete in college, and unfortunately for 5 years, I dealt with injuries, which was very frustrating for me. So when I became a coach, I had three top priorities, and that was that I would learn every single one of the events so that I could be their primary coach. When I was an athlete, we had multiple coaches leave, as coaches do, and there was for 5 years of my college career, I did not have a high jump coach, and I was primarily a high jumper and heptathlete. And so being able to serve the athletes in that capacity was really important to me. And then I learned along the way that strength and conditioning is also very helpful to be able to incorporate into your specific training. And so I got all of my certifications for strength and conditioning, which then help lead to also having more consistent training and also healthier training, because you can identify we're hurdling today, so we can't have soreness in our hamstrings, the day before. It's like a 2-day process to make sure that you're lifting them appropriately with what day they're doing each event. And so the health of the athlete became my priority. So the majority of our warm up is actually a version of prehabilitation or rehab, as well as getting them warmed up so we can avoid the injuries that are avoidable. And then also taking into consideration of where we're training, how we're training. And Vicky mentioned she had limitations with Damien being able to run 30 meters. I trained on a track that had a 50-meter straightaway. We could extend it to 60 meters once that rule changed over, but you were essentially running out a door onto a road at that point. But you do what you do with the facilities that you have and who you're sharing them with. I was blessed at the University of Colorado that we got a brand new indoor track that was 300 meters, which was a huge game changer for us. But then you also have our pole vault was run out of lane 2. And we have at the time, very strong distance team with 50, 60 runners that would be on the track for 2 hours during pole vault. And so it was, you had to manage those types of things. But I think having teammates that are of all different levels that can inspire as well, and also have different abilities in different events is helpful. So when I recruit, I'm looking for a great long jumper, a great high jumper. I don't need a whole team of specifically one event. I want them to learn from each other. And then also understanding that we have limitations because a lot of them are on small scholarships, that they'll also need to have outside jobs in the collegiate system. So we trained 5 days a week, 2 days off on the weekend, so they could have jobs, they could help pay for schooling. And then also when I've set it up this way, it has helped taking an athlete that is new or a bit into the event to potentially getting the opportunity to train post collegiately. And that's when you have to work within the university system of how many volunteer coaches do you have, helping advise them to have jobs that you can use the facility that they have availability during those times, and then incorporating them in the team. And I think that's been a really big game changer for my group is they are invested in the team. They want to be a part of the team. The youngers can learn from them. And then also it gives them a challenge. You don't want a sophomore on the team to be beating someone who's trying to go out for a senior team. So it's a really great level of fun and excitement. And I think that's the biggest focus is I try to keep them healthy and I try to keep them having fun. And that's how we've been the most successful.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. I always love
Absolutely.
looking at the posts of your groups, and they're having fun. That's the key thing.
Thank you.
Fernando?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Lindsay, Vicky, nice to meet you. Nice to share information with you. I'm going to do a little bit opposite. Just instead to present myself, to going directly to the point of this meeting. I'm in the transition between junior and senior. And in the meantime, maybe telling why I'm coming to these topics. Um, I studied physical education in Spain. I'm really born. I coming from Argentina, but I was studying in Spain, in Granada, for physical education. And I was also very intrigued about talent, because talent is a big name that require a lot of, let's say, approach to understand what means talent. Sometimes you have the tendency to see first the morphological side, the body of the athletes. Also, you check out the parents, how they look like, the muscles compositions, and of the motor skills are far strong and so on. But that's what you see. There are a lot of things that you don't see. During my study, when I did my PhD work, yes, I started to really control how can you develop talent and what is really needed to get the high level. Uh, I think that when I was an athlete, I practiced decathlon, low level. But some events I was coaching myself because I have a great coach. He dared to say sometimes, I don't know. All the coaches have the tendency to say, I know everything, but it's not true. You always are with some doubts as a coach or try to find information to provide the best program to athletes. But my coach, he really was open-minded and told me, I don't know about pole vault. And I start to look myself, how can I learn? And at the time, at the 90s, without internet, was just looking the German light athletics magazine and trying to see the picture and to imitate it. And from that way, I was really coaching myself to learning the pole vault. But long story short, and making the bridge with talent, um, yes, I started to work with athletes, young athletes, and I was also seeing why good athletes or good talent never make the top. But what really happens? Um, Seeing the different decades that the culture are changing, and the generation from now is different than the generation from 10 years ago. You have to understand that you have to explain them. You start as a teacher to teach them what really means high performance. When you find a talent, um, and high performance is also like talent, the big name because what is into high performance. And I think that explain them that there is a tie direction into high performance, that you require the special character to be an athlete. Um, that also there are different kind of selections. You are select for a championship. You are select to a training camp. You are select to get some scholarship. Um, and it's exclusively also. It's only for the best. It's about competing and trying to beat the other one and to beat yourself. You are always going to be into pressure environment because thousands of people are looking to you, and you have to do your best performance there. Uh, and into high performance, you also have confrontations. And in confrontations, confronting message just a correction or some behavior change is something that you have to create. Let's say that the room, the space to discuss with athletes and with other members of staff from the team. Um, right, understanding what is high performance and seeing what is necessary. Yeah, I start to look which one are the drivers that doesn't allow people to get the top. Maybe I'm going to share a presentation if I find it here. Um, uh, yes, this one. Uh, mm, okay. All right. No, this one. That is the last one. I'm going to the first. Richie was speaking about North Fitz, and yeah, she's a girl I working with for more than 12 years with her. I made all the journey from under 18 till now. And she was not silver, she was bronze at the Olympic Game in Paris. But before this, she became two times a world champ indoor. in 2022 and 2023. And in 2024, she won for the first time the bronze medal at the European Championship. And it was a really achievement for her because she's originally a very bad thrower. When she started to work with me, she was not able to throw 25 meters with the javelin. And in Paris, she made 45 meters. And this event was really, yeah, let's say the price of the medal. But thinking about what is necessary in high performance is, yeah, for me, about bridging the gap. You have to find the gap between what is needed and what do you have. But why different athletes from junior medalists struggle to get a senior level? Um, and the success early doesn't guarantee you to make succeed as a senior. And and the problem is, in my opinion, more the systemic and not about the individual talent. Everything that happened around the talent is limiting the evolution of the athlete. There are different factors. One of them is the structural financial, the federation's policies, sometimes putting a lot of attention to win medals when you are under 18 or under 20. There is also a weak transition. Programs sometimes are weak, are orientating to here and now instead the future. In some countries, it's a lost scholarship on funding to support talent. And also, yeah, the early professionalization and academic conflict are leading because, yes, not all the places in the world are easier to combine studies with training or with high level training. And sometimes you don't find the people around you to support you and to help you to get the top. But other factors are training, physiological, yes, maturity, early maturity is leading to stagnation. Because, like I said, people or guys under 18 or under 16 with a body for an adult are sometimes being a temptation for coaches to train hard. And you don't know if they are really improving of performing because they are talent of because they are training a lot. Um, and what means a lot, you never know because it's changed depending of the level of the athlete and the tolerance of the athlete. Um, and this one for me is one of the important, the poor long-term training plans. People speak about long-term plan, but what really means? And a long-term plan is covering a lot of things. It's not only the trainings that you put to do the week program, but it's about lifestyle, it's about psychological evolution, it's about financial evolution, it's about a lot of things more than only the trainings program or the week program with all the periodization with 2 peaks or 3 peaks of the years, and that's all. Um, there are also problems like trying to change technique and too early or too late. Injuries early, yeah, according to early maturation, because yes, when you do a lot, you see a bigger body, but you don't know what happened inside. And sometimes the joints and sometimes the muscles are not really symmetrical, and you lead to overload and to injuries are also psychological and social troubles. Like yes, when you achieve a high results of succeed as a young, and after yeah, you stagnate and result, you start to struggle with failures. You're no more the winner, and it's making a lot of a big impact in your mind and in the people working with you. Lead sometimes to burn out of lose motivation. When you change coach, also can be a problem of leading to yes, it's no really change coach is not only the solution. Sometimes it's trying to find into your environment how can you be creative and how can you improve what you have instead to change and start with a new program. It's not a solution to change coach. I know that this is fancy, change coach, and when thing is going bad, it's always a coach. When thing is going good, is oh, what a great athlete, is the idea. Another factor is yeah, when you move from to another city or when you change countries, yes, you can't lose in your support and your network. In general, many system train to win as a junior and not perform to a senior is a problem. But there are some things that we can yes take away from this, and this really what I was using in all my career. Is okay trying to plan long term. And long term is really okay. The first phase is learning. Second phase is being stronger. Third phase is being resilient, and fourth phase is maybe performing, and again and again and again. And also the structure, junior to senior, you need the transition is very important to see what you're going to change. It's necessary to change the technique. It's necessary to let's say let young athletes do what senior athletes are doing in a less volume, or is maybe smart to adapt what you see that the athlete is capable to do, what make him or her good enough, and that try to develop as much as possible. Also, financial support, try to have some stability on the long term from federation, from parents, from crowdfunding, or also teaching the athletes to be stable at financial side. A lot of athletes have a tendency to expect that federation is going to pay for all the bills, but not in all the countries that happen thing like that. Um, you need to protect them and to guide them to have a develop at the mental side because the way how you think is going to have a big impact in your future as an athlete. And also to progress the level of maximal capacities. I mean, all the motor skills that you need to improve. Try to be progressive and don't doing things too early. Let's say trying to train lactics as fast as possible to run and a fast 400 meters. Maybe it's better to learn a better technique at the high jump than having a good 400 meter at the age of 18. My big message is yeah, try to train for a long-term potential and not just to early medals. And I think that is an important topic to discuss because we see more and more, we are confronting also with athletes coming to you for some support, and you see what they're making good in what they are doing, but to decide okay which way are going to follow to guide you to become a better athlete, um, uh, yes, bring a lot of complexity. And another big message is try to do with people around you and don't try to solve everything alone. Creating a good team, people that try to help you. Okay, you take the responsibility as a coach to make the last decision, but let you as a coach advices from people that seen for another yes for another way than you are seeing. Okay, I hope that is interesting, but
No,
I was directly to the point that you want to speak into the.
no, that's excellent. All of you are excellent. It makes me think of a couple of things here, and I'm just going to throw this out for anybody to respond. And we're going to lose Vicky soon for another meeting, so we may let her respond first. But it seems all of you talked about the importance of uh, early development, but for long term, not just for maximizing area there and stages you go through there. And that's great. We talked about the coaching education, all that. Fernando talked about one of the issues is that there's too much emphasis on trying to get medals young and be too successful too early. Long-term development is often sacrificed for here and now. So here's the question. Uh, Internationally, you have European under 18 championships, under 20 championships, world level under, you know, area and international championships. In the United States, you have high schools where athletes like that I work, they want to go on to the college level, so they want to perform better earlier so they can get to college. College now, and Vicky, the college system in Canada, I know is a little different, a little more developmental, maybe in some ways, is a way to put it as compared to NCAA, but a lot of Canadian athletes are in the NCAA. And Lindsay, it's now with the current changes too, it's all about the here and now and doing this. So and then the pressures of money, contracts, being able to get the sport to go on. If you don't show something, you don't get that, no matter whether you're almost there or already there. So how do you then convince athletes for the long term? The other thing is the human nature of a 16, 17, 18-year-old and even a 20, 21, 22-year-old doesn't want to hear, let's plan for 5 years from now. They want to know what they're going to do this weekend and what they're going to do next week and next month. And they want it to be as good as it can be. So how do you balance all that when we all know what we should be doing? Can we actually do that and convince others to do that within these constraints of the whole system around us? Hey,
Yeah,
Vicky?
Richie, great question. I think athletes obviously that we're working with, like Lindsay and I in particular, are coming in at a different level. So their peak is going to be when they're finished university. Okay. So, but every now and then we do get an athlete who we know is, is special in the respect that their ceiling is going to be much higher. So it's not all the athletes that we would deal with. I think when I've been recruiting athletes that have been the top in Canada, I will say to them that, if you stay here and work with me, you'll develop at your own pace. There won't be like the pressure. And I see that, you can stay in the sport once you've graduated from university. But those conversations don't happen that often. It is hard because if an athlete does go to the NCAA, they could develop and do very, very well for those 4 years, but then they do have to plan beyond that because they have to look at, are they going to be able to stay within that same program in a post-collegiate training program, or are they going to have to leave? So I think it really depends on the level of the athlete that you're like recruiting or working with at the early stages before they make those decisions. And the bottom line is the athlete's decision needs to be based on where they feel, the most peace with themselves. Like even just in Jackson's situation, I mean, there's still a lot to navigate here because he is very talented, but he had signed to go to a D1 school for track. And from a track perspective, that's outstanding because he's in the sport. But once he made that decision, he just wasn't happy because he knew he couldn't play football anymore. So I did feel like having him, okay, stay at home. He's in residence, so he's not living, he's at least gotten out of, well, anyway, getting some independence and away. And he was able to play football and continue in track. But with him, I'll have to sit down and say, okay, this is your long-term plan. Like right now, you're happy. You've been happy with the decision that you've made, and let's kind of. So I think that has a lot to do with a person's success, is that they are happy. Ultimately, I know that the best for this athlete in the sport of track and field is not to be playing football and trying to progress as, long term. So, maybe we'll have to sit down and come up with, okay, you've got 2 more years and then I need this from you, or else like, you're not going to reach the goals that you're capable of reaching. So yeah, I think every case is kind of different. And every ceiling of an athlete is, depending on what their ceiling is, it might be fine to get the scholarship, pay for your education, feel good about where you're going to school and that you're going to get a job, after. But it is those, I do think, though, back to your first part of your question, having the U18 and U20 championships and having our athletes do the best there, I would rather see developmental starting at that age, development in the sport starting at that age, if they are really a medalist at that time, if they are managed properly and on a like if they progress well and not too quickly and they're kind of held back a little bit, then I think they'll have greater success 10 years from the U18 championships.
Maybe I want to add something short. It's very clear, Vicky, what you are saying. But going back to your question, Richie, I don't think that long term mean not performing. You can perform also working long term. But for us as coaches, is the main idea from the coach perspective. What am I going to teach? I am going to push across the program to get results now, or can I, with just teaching, with just learning technique, with just the talent potential, achieve results? And teach them also to work to a big event. You can learn at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old to work to one tournament because it's going to happen when you're an old athlete. And that's what sometimes is misunderstanding, that long term mean not performing. You can perform in also working long term.
And I'm going to throw one thing and then let Lindsay go. Working with 15 to 18-year-olds for a long time, when they do buy into that, not worrying about performance results, but work on development and those things, they still perform well. And they may not, you're not rushing to get everything out of them right then, but they do perform well, but you're also setting them up for later on continuing to develop. Lindsay?
From what we've been able to accomplish in my program, I understand all of the challenges that everyone faces here. And then there's the new challenge of also parental expectations, not only from your administration, your head coach, the conference, the nation you're representing. There's expectations everywhere on and opinions on how people should be progressing, regardless if they have the background knowledge to be having those opinions or not. So that's, I find, the challenge, as well as social media is an interesting challenge because the information is known to everyone and they have the ability to grasp ideas from other coaches or other athletes or even other feelings. My group were very, very focused on your developing always. So we're going to celebrate every centimeter PR. And it's silly to some people, but it was only a centimeter, but you're a centimeter closer. And if that's in a high jump, you have 2 more centimeters and then you've got the next inch. So it's all focused on like you're making these incremental gains in every single day, whether that's your knowledge, your flexibility, your awareness of yourself, how you can manage your emotions, your feelings, your cadence of your steps, your breathing, mastering something new in the weight room. But we're looking for those incremental gains every single day. And that's everything involved physically, mentally, and then that's how they make the gains. Yes, I still have the pressure of having a head coach and having an athletic director that wants to win things. But inevitably, if we focus on, I have to jump, 180, 183 to get to these meets for a female high jumper, it's not going to happen. If you focus on, I need to figure out this technical gain here, or this suppleness, or the fact that I don't have the right flexibility in my ankle, those things will help you get there faster. And so it's really on the daily helping all of your stakeholders understand how training development actually occurs. And yes, having U20s and having all the senior championships as a goal, conference championships, is amazing and wonderful. And I think those things should be goals and something to aspire to. but it's their individual gains every single day. And you as a coaching either unit or you with that athlete being able to make that the trust gains every day, because eventually that athlete tells their friends or their parents or outsiders on what's going on. And you want that to be the same messaging so that their parents support them in their incremental gains and say, yeah, well, they aren't kind of, that's a hard thing, is managing the other stakeholders and the opinions that they have. So making sure that the parents understand that the student is progressing as well is really important, because that progression will hopefully last 10 years. But it has to start in the program that I work with, is that they also take accountability for their gains every day and do celebrate those 1 centimeter gains.
Well, and thank you. And I know I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but there's a story that Frank Dick told years ago, and he tells often about getting a Chinese bamboo tree and that it died in his backyard in Scotland, but then it came back 5 years later. And over the next 5 weeks, it grew to like 10 feet tall. And the notion being that a lot of times we don't see much improvement. Vicky talked about some levels, there's stagnation there, or there's plateauing and maybe a little bit, but then it all comes together. But that doesn't come together well without a long-term plan, as Fernando said, without patience and managing things like Lindsey's saying. And I think the other thing, and maybe you all can speak to this, is that you've all seen and maybe even worked with athletes at the under 20 level who you look at, and they are tremendously mature already physically, and that's, nature. They've also been trained maybe for a long time. They've maybe a little ahead of the game on training, and as Fernando says, maybe they're focusing too much on the results there instead of the long-term training. And you look at them, and they're good athletes, but maybe they don't go farther. You've also seen some, and I remember when I saw Vicky, and Vicky just had to go to a meeting in Jamaica and looked at this 20-year-old, and he couldn't vault very well, couldn't throw very well, and he was in this decathlon, but I looked at him move and like, oh my. And that's the first time I heard or had seen Damian Warner. You could know that with the proper development, that person was going to keep going far because of the talent there, raw, but a lot of talent. So you've seen some of those. Is it simply nature more that has led them to develop early and not have much room to proceed? Or is it more that Fernando's saying there are things that have gotten in the way? I took a picture of this, Fernando, and I'll read these out again. Um, Key factors, and some are early specialization and burnout stagnation, poor long-term training plans, technical changes mismanaged, injuries, and early maturation. A lot of those things we see happen with some of these fantastic under 20 athletes. How do you make judgment of that? Is there a way to save some of those and continuing developing, or are they just bound to not really develop?
I think that sometimes we forget it that each one of each athlete, from the biological perspective, are made to achieve result early in the age. Sometimes with some athletes, they reach the top at the 20 of the 19 years old, and they are not capable to achieve the high level later. But it's something that we don't know because yeah, coaching athletes is really diving into the unknown. You have information, you try to follow science, you try to take a measurement, you try to count things, but final destination is impossible to know. You see after the year when you make an analysis from the athlete career. Okay, which other decision could I take to improve the level of those athletes? And sometimes, because I really coach many athletes in my life, when I see back the top moment of those athletes, um, in most of the case, I confirm that I think that he or she made the top at the moment that she had to make the top. Um, and again, it's tough because when you are working with an athlete, you are working with the dream of them, trying to help them to reach some expectation. You try to validate all the training, but you never know the final destinations. It's accepting that the talent and the motivation is a big deal, but it's not enough. It's not everything. And then Lindsay was speaking about the mental side. I think it's very important just to let them understand that why are they doing what they are doing, and instead to only think, yeah, your goal or your of your purpose, because it's only is about that, and you 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 suppose that you are not going to achieve it, it's going to work against your motivation. You never know what's going to happen, but at the meantime, some athletes reach the top early because the biorhythm of them uh, was that.
Lindsay?
I agree a lot with Fernando and Vicky have said also. These are great questions. I do believe that I want every athlete to want to attain the best of their abilities. And every athlete that I typically have crossed says, of course, I want to be an Olympian one day. I want everyone to have the highest level of aspiration. And just like Fernando says, that's not going to happen for everyone. In fact, it's such an extremely small number that does happen to. However, you want them to have high goals like that, but also the ability to be realistic within their own confines of their abilities, because getting to that level for some people will take years and years and years, decade, before they have the ability to be on that stage. And are they willing to have, the investment, the time, the support, potentially after college, they're going to, in the United States, you're not, we have a different funding system than some other countries do. And so you have to have a full-time job. And I can speak from the personal experience of my husband made several Olympic teams while being a college coach, which we all know how hard coaching is and how much energy and time it takes out of you. But it also gave him the ability to be in the arena for more often so that he could train, he could travel with the team and compete at those meets. And not saying that that's the ideal environment either, standing out by a discus ring for 8 hours before your elite section comes up and have the ability to throw. But he made the best of those circumstances. And his growth was rarely incremental as well. So out of high school, he was a 3-time state champion, maybe 4-time state champion in the discus. But it was something that he was, learning on a small level. And he, like you're discussing with a great athlete, he had to put on over 100 pounds to be at the level that he needed to do. So his development for that, when you're looking at athletes, if I saw him being a coach that I am now, and I saw him warming up in the stadium as a high schooler, I would have said, this kid has tools. But a lot needed to happen for those tools to come together to be something great, including putting on over 100 pounds of muscle. I really like your point of, being able to tell that there's a different intangible for a student athlete. For me, recruiting is one of my favorite things, and getting to them, watch them when they do not know they're being watched. I love watching warm-ups. I love watching how they interact with their coaches, their parents, the officials, and you get to see what their take is, how they move, what they're doing for the potential trajectory of them in the sport, but also as them as an individual. And it's going to change throughout their time as well, and what their priorities are. For our programs, oftentimes, if we're not going to be ready to score in a multi, because a lot of them are new, they're going to have an individual event that we're going to kind of not necessarily hone in on, but that's the one that we're going to help our head coach or someone else who needs to know that they're going to be valuable immediately, that they'll be scoring. Yes, they're going to be ready to score in high jump. They might not be ready to be a multi that's scoring or going to national until year 3, 4, 5, but we'll be ready in the high jump. We'll be ready in the hurdles. They'll be a relay lake. So they'll still be a valuable use of technically the money that's invested in them. And that's a horrible way of saying it, but they'll bring value to the team immediately, but it won't be to the highest level, because we all know for multi-event athletes and technical event athletes that the trajectory is a later thing. Sprinters are younger at the Olympics. Distance runners can be older. Multis and jumpers will take more time, as long as they can be in a program that develops health and their whole progression over time, that they will reach their highest stages typically at later. And if you can have the investment in that as a coach or a program, then it's the most I think comfortable environment for the student athlete to be able to trust it and then progress forward.
Those are great points, and something hit me right there. It reminded me, all three of you, a lot of your experiences with combined events athletes. You were combined events athletes. I was a combined events athlete, and I was probably way below your level, Fernando, of even average. Um, Vicky, I know, has worked with combined events athletes. There's a certain balance there that I think is so important. I know everybody agrees there. You're making them athletic while you're working generally and specifically in teaching your events. They become a multi-talented athlete. They become a better athlete, oftentimes healthier. There was a big movement here a few years ago with USA Tracker and others on this functional movement screen. And then it became a cottage industry where all these people would have you pay them to do your athletes, where you could do it yourself. Did some of the things myself because you know what you're doing. But when they did the testing on that, they tested different sports, American football, basketball, baseball, and they did athletics and the different events within. The very best scores in the first few years of using that were always heptathletes and decathletes because they had better movement experiences because of the training. And oftentimes they became a better hurdler when they did that event or a better, less romantic had Jessica Zelenka, who is a combined event athlete and who made finals of an Olympic hurdles. So that background, I think, too, helps toward long-term development of building a better athlete who can go on. I mean, your thoughts on that? Anyone?
Yeah, maybe to work in as a coach with combined event athletes, yeah, cover different topics. One of them for us as coaches, we learn or we coach our capacity to observe and to see technique and to see motions and to see someone into the weight room doing some motion or running over the huddles. We are looking to technique, trying to understand biomechanics, but when you see 10 athletes running over the huddle, they are doing it in different ways. That's why we as coach we develop the capacity to or the skills to see motions. But for the athletes happen exactly the same. They are being more symmetrical. They are finding solutions, their own solutions to run a huddle or to throw the discus or to do the pole vault. And I think that this problem that we put in the program, just try to solve the pole vault or try to solve the hurdles, is leading to increase the, yeah, the potential that they have, to use more muscle, to be more symmetrical. And don't forget that the variation is also a big motivation for the athletes. If you are always doing the same sprint of a long distance of throwing, that's why the combined event athletes and the combined event coaches, we have the tendency to be more open and to deal with coaches. And you see also the behavior of the athletes in competition is just running a final lap together, everybody arm by arm. This is nice to see, but also happen the same with coaches. Combined event is a big base, but at the same time, it's a danger because I see um, more and more that the possibilities for combined event athletes are becoming less competition, less amount athletes competing. It's easier to sprint, it's easier to reach the top in another event with I don't say less efforts, but in short time. Yeah, until you prepare a decathlon and a heptathlete to compete at high level is taking several years. Um, and if they don't have a lot of possibility and they have to invest a lot of years and the recognition is not high enough, yeah, I think that it's an event in danger. It's just something that I put on table. I also had conversations with European coaches. We are seeing that more and more are taking less competitions in Europe, combined events. And we try to react because with against this because we see what we are seeing, Richie, that the combined events provide athletes a big base for the future in one of other event.
I agree with Fernando. You're just spot on for many of the things, as are you, Richie. It's I think it's a challenge. And I think I do agree with you, Fernando, that it is going away, especially in the state. And I can speak specifically to the program that I represented. The University of Colorado last year decided to go distance only and some track events. So they actually cut the field events and combined events. So my husband and I were both laid off, as well as in our conference at the time, Washington State made the same decision. And that's the challenge with developing for the senior level. We had I'm very proud of the program. We achieved a lot of amazing accomplishments. The multi-program and the field events were actually leading the team for point scoring and going to nationals. But the decision to say the investment in whatever it was, because we didn't have the majority of the scholarships, it was changed. And so the hard part is you can find a trail to run on. You can find a track to run on. For a multi-event athlete to be able to find a pole vault pit, high jump pit, long jump, have access to be able to throw discus or javelin, especially if you're in a non-collegiate environment that really fully supports and sponsors it, it's going to be even more difficult for specifically people living in the United States to be able to have access to this. Because previously, even within the coaching system of the NCAA, up until a couple of years ago, you could only have 2 volunteer coaches, which oftentimes program made those spots for continuing athletes within the program so they could legally, through the eyes of the NCAA, train within those facilities, keep with their coach, keep with their team, still have access to those facilities. And now for field events and for combined events, that is extraordinarily more difficult because of the decisions that are being made.
Yeah. And that's something we're seeing in a lot of places. Yeah. Um, well, I did see, let me go right here because we did have a question come in. So, uh, let me go to here. If I can get this to pull up, having a difficulty pulling this.
I can read out the question if you want.
Oh, please do that. It's not showing up, it's partially
Okay,
showing. Thank you,
okay.
Sheila.
This is a question from Rita, and she asks, instant gratification of young athletes, parents and coaches seems more important than long-term development. How can this narrative be changed? Is it possible?
I think that, like I said at the beginning, Rita, y- you have a role as a coach, but in the early phases, you are also teaching them things. You are teaching them the way to high performance or the way to improve, but you teach them also to understand their parents. And you have to create space also to explain parents to yes, to understand what high performance mean. Because if you help the parents, you help also the athletes. There doesn't exist a book that teach you how can I act if my son, daughter are doing high performance sport. That's why if we want to help the athletes, we need to put some space to inform parents about their role. That the role is being parents and trying to deal of to let the childrens to explore how they can improve instead to trying to solve all those problems. That's my opinion. It's what I exactly do. I take time, one, two times a year, where I create space to inform parents about what mean high performance and why we decide to do what we do, and it helps.
I think for me, initially I was against social media. I didn't see a benefit of it. And then I kind of changed the narrative for that. So I created a social media page for my student athletes because a lot of people don't understand combined events anyway. And so it was to help them. But directly to your point, the social media page that I ran, I really made a focused effort to acknowledge the incremental gains as the important part so that the parents, everyone else supporting them could get to see that, hey, we're doing this in the weight room. They increased 5 pounds from last week, 20 pounds from last year, so that people can be a part of what is actual growth and they can see it from the athletes that are new to the program or the athletes that have become very successful in the program, that there are all these levels, and it's kind of learning from each other, and how to help the parents. And granted, everyone wants the best for their kid or their former athletes, and they want to be a part of that as well. And so it is continuing to make sure that those points are made, that your son or daughter is doing a great job on the program. This is going to be a trajectory on many different levels, and depending on their stress levels, their school levels, the people that they hang out with, including if they have a girlfriend, boyfriend at the time, like a lot of things are going to affect these young people's lives and how they're performing. And just to make sure that we're all focused on that, them as a happy, healthy individual is going to have the greatest levels for potential future improvement if we can all just be supportive of them in the endeavors that they're choosing.
I use a slogan of a quote to the athletes, and I say, okay, sport is emotions, but it's emotion for the spectators, for us, for press, for parents, and for people that know you. But it's not emotion for you or for the coach. I use this slogan to teach them that they have to understand that the other people wish you the best, but you don't need those wishes. You have to need to control your mind when you are acting in the big stage. And that's why I say try to learn them to understand the others. And in this case, the parents are the others.
Well, and I'm dealing with that literally last week with high school athletes who are a year before college, so they're juniors, and a couple of parents already, well, they didn't do well enough in this meet to. I was like, it's early. It's the first meet. It's not even March, and we have a lot more development to do. Be patient. So trying to get them to be patient, and our mantra is, it's obviously not ours ever, is trust the process.
Mhm.
You have to trust what you're doing there, and trying to shortcut it doesn't solve any problems, puts on more emotional stress. And then they worry, if I have to do this now and I don't, then it makes it harder. So it becomes more of a psychological problem for everybody involved. And so that's way too much of my time spent on that right now. But I think that's what we all deal with, is that, because this is this level where they are unsure of things and they are learning. Um, any other comments you want to make? I've one thing I wanted to share at the end, and thank you all, and Vicky too. But anything you want to share as well before we wrap up?
Maybe because it's about the transition from junior to senior. It's also a transition for a coach. Coach, yes, he travel all those times with athletes, and you are discovered as a coach step by step what you do. Again, you doesn't exist a course of a book that teach you how do you have to do to bring athletes from talent to high performance. You are discovered by doing, and and because it's like that, I think that being open minded and try to share with other coaches their experience and participating and trying to help the others and let you help. Um, I think that is the mission that we have to let's say push from your organization, Richie.
I think opportunities like this are absolutely phenomenal to learn from other coaches, to have the ability to communicate about what everyone's doing or what we see our trends. The Richie, the fact that you're delving in more to having to trust the process. I think it's always been there, but I think it's just more there because of social media and because everyone can have an input and there are more people that want to be helpful and to get to that stage. But I also think that's one of the best parts, is being able to communicate like you do and communicating with the student and with the parent. But in my opinion, for college at least, it is, those communication lines are open with the student athlete every single day, because you want to help talk them through the process and help them understand where their goals are, where their abilities are, what that looks like in a typical progression for people that you've coached over the 4 to 5 years, if that is going to turn into something seniors. And it's never a potential saying like, no, you're not ready for that. It's just saying these are the things that maybe you need to make improvements on, or this is the way you need to start thinking for that to be a more viable opportunity as you get, for me, closer to the end of your collegiate transition to be that next level. So I think communication for all of this is wonderful. So thank you for creating this opportunity and letting me be part of the panel of esteemed coaches here to get to discuss it. I've truly enjoyed my time, and I think this is magnificent. So thank you.
Thanks. And I was thinking this recently. I had an athlete that I worked with from 12 years old to 18 years old. She went on to college. She now is a mother. She's 31, maybe is a mother of a 1 year old. And she wanted to come back out and help out. So she came back out and started helping out. And she's like, this is so wonderful to be back here, but just sort of giving back. And it made me feel good as a coach, because the other thing too is coaches aren't happy with what they do and see their own successes and feel that from the process. The story I wanted to tell was, and I saw Fernando some last year, I went to Goetze's, the hypo meeting last May for the 50th anniversary. And one person who was supposed to be there, Vicky, talked about Les Gromantek, who's an old friend and a great coach, and having some health issues. He was unable to go. But Mike Smith was there from Canada, and I introduced myself and was talking to Mike, and he said, and I don't remember the year, but somewhere in the 1990s, he said, Les and I set the record here. He didn't say I set the record and Les, my God, he said Les and I set the record. We did it together. Watching Fernando in 2024 in Paris, that's what I kept seeing when I kept seeing clips. I was watching on TV, he and Norvitz, and getting a chance to meet her briefly and see their interaction and how much fun they have working with each other as coach and athlete. But seeing that, I mean, she would probably say the same thing. They meddled together, and you probably have athletes you felt about. So the whole point of this is not only improving coaching, and that things that happen when coaching matter, but that coaches matter too, and celebrating coaches. So, and I hope Vicky gets a chance to hear this later, because I'm sure that's what she's felt. She's been there along for that. You're not just in the stands. And sports like American football and basketball and baseball and international soccer, the coaches and managers get paid hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're interviewed and they're the focus. In athletics, we're sort of just out of the picture behind. The agent is more important sometimes. So just wanted to thank you all for that and celebrate you as coaches and know how important you have been in that role there. And any final comments you want to make about coaching and maybe the feelings you've had of that. I know Fernando was over the moon when she won that medal, and he deserved to be as happy as she did. Any last comments?
No, again, Richie, that happy to contribute, happy to speak, happy to share, and always open to collaborate with each initiative that you make to help coaches the globe level, just around the world, and try to unify knowledge, unify experience to influence athletes and to make the best that we can make for us and for the other. That's my final message.
Thank you for just having us. I think coaches are just some of the greatest people to ever walk the earth, and the consideration that they, and teachers in general, put into helping another person achieve their dreams is just one of the best experiences you can have in this life. And I'm so thankful that this is the journey that I've gotten to be on. And I'm so thankful for all the wonderful coaches out there that are helping the next generation of young people grow up and potentially be coaches or have an awareness of the greater good of sport and the greater good of people, for everybody, for our entire globe. So thank you very much to everyone.
All right. And thanks to both of you and to Vicky. Jimson Lee is in the background. There's Jimson. He's our technician and just had a long flight. It's late for him. So thank you. This recording will be posted soon, and I'll get information out about where it will be for you all and for people who weren't able to participate. Tell your friends about these. We do these every few months. There's an Eastern session for that half of the world and a Western forum here. And just to, think about the things that they talked about today about that, for one thing, there are some athletes who are probably never meant to go on to great success at senior level. Others who are. How do we help those who are, identify them, and how do we help them get there and help them on that long process of development and keeping them healthy, keeping them development at the right process instead of sort of dropping the ball in between those. So thanks of all of you that are participants today on this. And again, thanks to Jimson for running this and Vicky, Fernando, and Lindsay. And we hope to see you all again soon.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.